The hotel had never been silent like this before. Its hallways, usually humming with the gentle rhythm of footsteps and distant laughter, now lay heavy under a tense, suffocating quiet. Outside, the wind whispered through the tall oaks lining the driveway, brushing against the windows with a soft, eerie hiss. Inside, shattered glass glinted under the dim emergency lights, the sound of dripping water echoing like a heartbeat in a room that had just been violently ripped from its comb. She crouched beside the smashed lobby entrance, her hands shaking as she tried to sweep the shards into a pile. Each fragment reflected the bright neon sign outside in jagged, painful shards, and she could feel her pulse hammering against her temples. Why? Why would he do this? She whispered to herself, voice breaking, though the wind carried it away before it could find an answer. Her brother. The word tasted bitter in her mouth, each syllable echoing like a curse. She had fought tooth and nail to save this hotel, to turn it from a crumbling relic into a haven of warmth, and in a single night he had reduced it to chaos. She could still see the memory flashing before her eyes, him, laughing carelessly, tossing bottles and furniture, oblivious to everything but his own amusement. A sudden movement made her look up. Someone was there, standing in the doorway framed by the shattered glass and the pale glow of the streetlights. He was tall, with a coat that flapped against the wind, and eyes that seemed to see straight through her anger and exhaustion. "Need some help?" His voice was low, calm, almost soothing in contrast to the storm raging in her chest. "I don't even know where to start," she admitted, brushing a strand of hair from her face, her voice trembling more from shock than anything else. He stepped forward without hesitation, his hands brushing against the broken edges of glass to pick up fragments, carefully, almost reverently. "Sometimes you start with one piece at a time," he said, his voice carrying a strange warmth. There was something about the way he moved, deliberate yet gentle, that drew her in even as she wanted to push him away. She studied him, really studied him, as he worked. Dark hair falling slightly over his forehead, eyes sharp and yet soft when they met hers. She didn't know his name, didn't know why he was here, but in that moment, she felt a fleeting connection, as if their paths had crossed for a reason. Her anger simmered beneath the surface, but for the first time, she noticed the steadiness in his presence, the calm strength that mirrored what she had always admired in others, but never possessed herself. "You don't have to do this alone," he said, handing her a thick cloth to sweep up the smaller shards. His fingers brushed hers, and a spark, a literal, inexplicable spark, seemed to jolt her entire body. She pulled back slightly, embarrassed, but the electricity lingered. I can't let him get away with this," she said finally, her voice firming, though the tears in her eyes betrayed her vulnerability. He doesn't understand what this place means to me. To us." He nodded, silent for a moment, then said, "Sometimes people don't understand until they see the consequences. But right now, what matters is what you do next. You can rebuild this." Stronger than before. His words were simple, almost cliché, but somehow they struck her with the force of truth. She felt the first flicker of hope in hours, a fragile ember she was suddenly desperate to nurture. They worked in silence for a few minutes, letting the rhythm of their shared labor create a tentative bridge over the chaos around them. A crash from the back of the hotel made her jump, heart leaping to her throat. Her brother's shadow loomed in the broken hallway, laughing as he tossed another object aside. She clenched her fists, ready to explode, but the stranger's hand on her shoulder held her back. "Let him go for now," he murmured, voice calm but firm. "This is about you, not him. Right now, it's about saving what you can." She swallowed hard, biting her lip, and nodded, allowing herself to focus on the task at hand. They moved through the hotel like ghosts, picking up, arranging, repairing in small, deliberate steps. It was exhausting work, but the rhythm of it, the quiet moments of shared determination, made her feel alive in a way she hadn't in days. Between sweeping shards and stacking chairs, their glances met repeatedly, each one loaded with unspoken questions and tiny admissions. When she dropped a piece of glass and he bent to pick it up, their fingers brushed again, this time lingering just a fraction longer. She felt heat rush to her cheeks, and for a brief, almost unbearable second, the world outside the hotel, the destruction, the betrayal faded into nothing but him, and the strange, delicate connection forming between them. "You're different," she found herself whispering as they paused for a moment near the lobby desk, both catching their breath. He tilted his head slightly, a small half-smile appearing. "Different can be good," he said softly. "It can mean you see things others don't. You fight harder for what matters." Her chest tightened. She didn't know if it was the exhaustion, the relief, or the undeniable pull she felt toward him, but her lips felt suddenly dry, and the world seemed unbearably close and impossibly far, all at once. She wanted to ask him who he was, why he was here, but something in his eyes, calm and patient, told her that this was not the moment for questions. This was the moment to simply feel hours passed like minutes. The lobby slowly regained a sense of order, and though cracks remained, both in the walls and in her heart, she felt a strange satisfaction. They had survived the night. They had survived the chaos. And in doing so, they had discovered something neither expected, a shared spark, fragile but real, something that promised heat and light even in the darkness. As she straightened the last chair, her brother's voice echoed down the hallway again, taunting, careless, defiant. Her stomach twisted, and she felt the familiar surge of anger and frustration. But then she looked at the stranger, whose calm gaze met hers, steady and unwavering, and for the first time, she believed that they might actually be able to face whatever came next together or apart. He reached out, briefly touching her hand. "No matter what happens," he said, voice low and steady, "you won't face it alone." She wanted to believe him, to trust in the warmth that had blossomed between them in this night of shattered glass and stolen moments. But even as hope fluttered in her chest, the echo of her brother's recklessness reminded her, nothing would be simple. Not love, not family, not redemption. And as the wind whispered through the broken windows, carrying the scent of rain and cold concrete, she realized with a shiver that this night, the night the glass shattered, was only the beginning. The beginning of chaos, yes, but also the beginning of something dangerously, irresistibly, unforgettable. The morning sunlight filtered through the cracked windows, scattering jagged patterns across the lobby floor. Dust hung in the air, thick and suffocating, clinging to her hair and clothes, as though the night's chaos had left its mark on everything. She crouched near the front desk, cataloging what had survived the destruction, her fingers tracing the edges of broken furniture, like she could feel the memories, embedded in each splintered surface. Her phone buzzed, but it wasn't a text from her brother. She didn't expect him to apologize. It wasn't even a friend checking in. Instead, it was the stranger, the one who had appeared amid the wreckage last night, sitting outside the hotel in the early sunlight, waiting. His figure was framed perfectly by the doorway, leaning casually against the frame, a coffee cup in hand. She blinked, caught off guard. "You're back?" she asked, voice tight, a mix of surprise and something else, something she couldn't name yet. He tilted his head, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "You left a mess yesterday," he said lightly, though the concern in his eyes betrayed the casual tone. "I figured you might need an extra pair of hands. I can manage," she said, straightening up and brushing her skirt. But her pride faltered when she noticed the subtle way he watched her, patient, calm, the kind of gaze that makes you feel both seen and unguarded at once. "Maybe," he said, stepping inside. "But why manage alone when it's easier with someone who won't make things worse?" His humor was soft, teasing, yet there was a sincerity beneath it that made her stomach twist. They moved together through the hotel, the routine of cleaning and repairing, creating a rhythm that felt both awkward and intimate. He would hand her a mop or a rag, and their fingers would brush more often than necessary, lingering just long enough to make her pulse quicken. There was an unspoken tension in those touches of quiet. Magnetic pull neither wanted to acknowledge fully. At one point, she paused by the shattered window in the lobby, staring at the twisted glass reflecting the morning sun. "I don't know how we're going to fix all this," she admitted, voice trembling. "It's like trying to build a castle out of smoke." He knelt beside her, picking up shards with careful precision. "You can," he said quietly, meeting her eyes. "It might not be perfect, but it will stand. And you'll stand with it." She looked away, embarrassed by the swell of emotion rising in her chest. It wasn't just gratitude. It was more, something she hadn't expected, a sense of relief, of connection that seemed almost forbidden. "It's just my brother," she whispered. "He doesn't understand anything. He doesn't understand me. This place, nothing." "I get it," he said softly. "Family can be complicated. Sometimes they're the hardest to forgive, even when they hurt you the most." His words were careful, comforting, and she felt herself leaning into them just a little, against her better judgment. A sudden crash from the back hallway made her jump, heart hammering. She spun around, half expecting her brother again, but it was just a stack of chairs falling over. He caught her arm instinctively, steadying her, and their eyes met in a charged moment of closeness. The air between them thickened, electric, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just the two of them, and the way his fingers felt against hers. "Careful," he murmured, a trace of a smile in his voice. "Wouldn't want you to get hurt." "Not when there's so much to fix." Her breath hitched, caught between irritation and a strange warmth she couldn't place. "I'm fine," she said quickly, though her cheeks burned. "I don't need help like that." He didn't argue, but he didn't pull away either. Instead, they continued, side by side, moving through broken furniture and scattered papers, their bodies brushing occasionally. Each contact was fleeting, but each left a lingering heat that neither could ignore. Hours passed in a blur of effort and quiet words, punctuated by occasional arguments over how to prioritize repairs. She wanted to salvage the lobby first. He insisted on securing the back office. Their bickering was sharp, but lightened by subtle humor, the kind that makes you forget the outside world even exists. And through it all, she noticed the way he watched her when she thought she wasn't looking, the way he seemed genuinely invested, not just in the hotel, but in her. By midday, exhaustion had claimed her, and she sank onto a dusty sofa in the corner. He followed suit, lowering himself opposite her. The quiet between them was heavy, filled with things neither dared say. She stared at the floor, tracing a crack in the wood with her finger, suddenly aware of how close he was, of the warmth radiating from him. "You're stronger than you think," he said softly, his voice low, intimate. "And not just because you're saving this place. You're strong because you care so much that it hurts. Most people never feel like that." Her eyes lifted to meet his, and for a moment, the weight of the hotel, her brother, and the shattered glass seemed to vanish. There was only him, and the way his gaze held her steady, grounding her even when everything else felt like chaos. She began, then stopped, unsure how to articulate the storm of gratitude, attraction, and guilt swirling inside her. He leaned slightly closer, a quiet invitation in the tilt of his head. "You don't have to explain," he whispered. "Sometimes just feeling it is enough." Her heart skipped. She wanted to reach out, to close the distance between them, but the memory of her brother's betrayal, the responsibilities she carried, anchored her in caution. Yet, the pull was undeniable, a magnetic force she had never felt before. They sat in silence for a while, the rhythm of their breathing, the hum of distant traffic, and the occasional creak of the hotel forming a subtle symphony around them. She felt herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in months, the tension in her shoulders easing, replaced by a delicate anticipation. Finally, she stood, brushing the dust from her hands. "We should finish the office next," she said, voice firmer now. Though her pulse still raced. He nodded, standing as well, their hands brushing once more. Neither spoke of the unspoken current between them, but both felt it, heavy and undeniable. The complicated connection was forming, fragile yet real, promising warmth and danger in equal measure. Outside, the wind shifted, rustling the leaves and carrying the faint scent of rain. The day stretched ahead of them, long and uncertain, filled with challenges and decisions yet to come. And somewhere, in the shadows of the hotel they were repairing together, an unspoken truth lingered. This stranger was no longer just a helper. He was a presence she couldn't ignore, a quiet force drawing her toward something she wasn't sure she was ready for. And as she glanced at him, catching his gaze for a brief, fleeting moment, she realized with a thrill that whatever came next, whatever storms they faced, they would face them together, whether she liked it or not. Rain slanted against the windows, a rhythmic percussion that matched the rapid beating of her heart. The hotel was quiet now, empty of guests, empty of chaos, save for the occasional drip of water from the cracked ceiling. She sat on the edge of the counter in the small kitchen, a steaming mug of tea cupped between her hands, its warmth grounding her in the moment. He leaned against the doorway, his coat damp from the storm outside, droplets clinging to the dark fabric like tiny diamonds. "Couldn't let you have all the fun with the repairs tonight," he said, a hint of humor in his tone that couldn't mask the underlying tension in his eyes. "You're relentless," she said, a small smile tugging at her lips, though her voice wavered. "And apparently fearless about rain." He shrugged, stepping closer, the faint scent of rain and something distinctly him filling the space between them. "Maybe I just like seeing you survive the storm." Her chest tightened, and she looked down, unsure whether to laugh or let the quiet vulnerability of the moment sink in. Finally, she admitted softly, I don't usually let anyone see me like this. Not when I'm tired. Not when I'm scared." He nodded, eyes gentle. "I get that, but you don't have to pretend around me. Not here, not now." For a long moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the rain and the distant hum of the city. She sipped her tea, feeling the warmth seep into her fingers and spread through her chest, calming the anxious fluttering of her pulse. "It's not just the hotel," she murmured. "It's my life. Everything I've worked for. And then, him," she gestured vaguely toward the direction of her brother's apartment above the lobby, "comes in and destroys it. And I hate that I care, that it hurts me so much." "I understand," he said quietly, taking a cautious step closer. His hand hovered near hers, almost brushing her fingers. "Family can be complicated. Sometimes love comes with the heaviest weight." Her gaze lifted, locking with his, and for the first time, she felt a true understanding between them. His presence was steady, an anchor in the storm of her emotions. "What about you?" she asked softly, curiosity mingled with a need for connection. "What's your story?" He hesitated, and she could see the flicker of shadows cross his features, memories he wasn't ready to reveal. Finally, he spoke, voice low and intimate. "I've had my share of mistakes. People I let down. Dreams I let slip away. I've spent a long time trying to fix what I can, hoping it's enough. The honesty struck her unexpectedly. It mirrored her own fears, her own regrets, and in that moment, she felt the first flicker of a profound connection, one that went beyond the simple spark of attraction. Her shoulders slumped slightly, the weight of her defenses lifting as she confessed. Sometimes I feel like I'm holding everything together alone. And it's exhausting. I don't even know if I'm doing it right. You're doing better than you think, he said gently, taking another step closer. And you don't have to do it alone anymore. Not with me around. Her breath caught. The way he said it, the quiet intensity in his eyes, made her pulse race. She wanted to reach for him, to let the flood of emotions take over, but fear and caution held her back. Instead, she nodded, feeling the gravity of unspoken desire, the tentative tension that seemed to hum between them. The rain intensified, tapping against the windows in a wild, urgent rhythm, and she found herself drawn toward the sound, toward the storm outside, mirroring the storm in her chest. "Do you ever regret choices?" she asked suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked down, a shadow crossing his face. "All the time," he admitted. "But regret isn't always bad. It teaches you. It shapes you. And sometimes it leads you exactly where you're supposed to be." She studied him, captivated by the honesty and the quiet vulnerability. "Then maybe," she said slowly, "we're both here for a reason. Even if the path is messy." He smiled faintly, a tender curve of lips that made her stomach flutter. "Messy can be beautiful," he said, "especially when you're with the right person." Her heart skipped at the words. She wanted to tell him how she felt, how every brush of his hand, every shared glance, made her dizzy with anticipation. But the moment felt fragile, delicate, and she feared breaking it with her own impulsiveness. Instead, she let the silence linger, charged with unsaid things, with longing suspended in the space between them. He moved slightly closer, the warmth radiating from his body, rushing against hers. "I don't want this night to end," he murmured. His voice was low, intimate, as if sharing a secret meant only for her. "Neither do I," she whispered back, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and desire. The world outside, the rain, the shattered hotel, they all faded, leaving only the two of them, suspended in a fragile moment that promised everything and nothing all at once. They sat together in quiet companionship, sharing fragments of their lives, their regrets, their hopes. Words flowed in fits and starts, sometimes halting, sometimes urgent, until the emotional walls they built around themselves began to crumble. She found herself laughing at a story he told about his failed attempts at running a small cafe years ago, and then tearing up as he shared the memory of a lost love that still haunted him. "You're surprisingly human," she said finally, wiping at her cheeks. "Not just some mysterious stranger showing up at my hotel." "I am human," he said, his hand brushing hers accidentally, or perhaps intentionally, sending a jolt of warmth through her body. "Messy, flawed, trying to be better. Just like you." Their eyes met, and in that gaze, they acknowledged the spark simmering between them. It was tender, hesitant, and charged with a tension neither dared to name yet. The rain outside mirrored the storm within, rhythmic and relentless, a reminder that this night was not just about confessions. It was about the first brush of something dangerously irresistible. Hours passed, and the rain began to ease, leaving a soft mist in its wake. She leaned back against the counter, exhaustion mingled with a strange exhilaration. I think I can face tomorrow," she said softly, glancing at him. "Maybe even fix the hotel, if I'm lucky." He nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. "You will," he said simply. "And I'll be around to make sure you don't face it alone." She smiled, a mixture of gratitude and longing, but there was still that unspoken tension, the quiet knowledge that the night's confessions had opened doors neither was ready to fully step through. They were closer now emotionally, physically, but the next step remained uncertain, dangerous, and irresistible. The storm outside had passed, but inside, the air was thick with possibilities, charged with the electricity of raw honesty and unspoken desire. And as she watched him prepare to leave for the night, a part of her ached, wanting to reach out, to pull him back, to close the distance once and for all. The morning sun cast harsh lines through the half-repaired lobby, illuminating splintered wood and dusty countertops. She stood with her hands on her hips, surveying the chaos of yesterday and the incomplete work of today. Every broken chair, every shattered pane of glass, reminded her of her brother's carelessness and the burden she now carried alone. "I still don't see why you think letting him off the hook is okay," she said sharply, her voice echoing through the large room. "This isn't just about the hotel. It's about respect, accountability." He leaned casually against the stairwell railing, arms crossed, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "Because sometimes people don't learn when you scream at them," he said. "They learn when they see the consequences. And you, my friend, are all fire and fury. A little patience might go a long way." Her jaw tightened. "Patience doesn't fix shattered glass or unpaid bills." She shot back, glaring at him. "I've spent months saving this place, and one reckless night. And you want me to smile and forgive?" He pushed off the railing, stepping closer. "No," he said, calm but firm. "I want you to see that anger can blind you. You're so busy fighting him, you forget to fight for yourself too." The tension between them was palpable, a charged static that made her pulse quicken. Every argument, every counterpoint, seemed to ignite something deeper, something dangerous. She felt it in the tightening of her chest, in the way her fingers flexed at her sides, and even in the tremor of her lips when she finally spoke. "You're impossible," she hissed, a mix of exasperation and something more primal simmering beneath her words. "And yet, here I am," he said with a grin that was both infuriating and irresistible. "Still standing, still trying, still here," she swallowed, trying to suppress the shiver that ran down her spine. His proximity, the way his presence seemed to dominate the space, made her dizzy. Every brush of his sleeve as he leaned past her, every glance that lingered too long, pushed against the barrier she had carefully erected around her heart. "I don't need your help telling me how to handle my family," she snapped, though her voice wavered. "I can handle it myself." "You can," he admitted, softer now. "But you don't have to. No one said you have to carry it all alone." Her chest heaved as she tried to steady herself, balancing between frustration and desire. "It's not just the work," she admitted finally, her voice low. "It's everything. The betrayal, the mess. I don't know how to fix him or even myself sometimes." He took a slow step closer, the intensity of his gaze piercing through her defenses. "Maybe you don't have to fix anyone," he murmured. "Maybe you just need to let go a little, breathe, let someone else in." She shook her head, trying to resist, yet the pull between them was undeniable. The space they occupied was thick with heat, with unresolved tension, and with unspoken desire that neither dared name. She could feel it coiling inside her, a dangerous, magnetic force that drew her closer, even as reason screened for distance. "You're dangerous," she said finally, almost a whisper, the words barely escaping her lips. "You make me feel things I shouldn't. And you?" He countered, stepping even closer, closing the distance to mere inches. "You're just as dangerous. You make me feel the same way." And it's maddening. Her heart skipped at the admission. She wanted to retreat, to preserve the fragile control she still clung to, but she couldn't. Something in the way he looked at her, the way he breathed as if he'd share her air, drew her in like a tide she couldn't fight, A sudden crash from the storage room drew their attention, a stack of boxes tumbling down. She moved instinctively to pick up the pieces, and he bent beside her, their hands brushing as they reached for the same box. The touch sent a spark through her, and they froze, eyes meeting, the air thick with possibility. "You're close," she said, voice trembling, the words heavier than she intended. "So are you?" he replied, low and deliberate. The collision of their emotions, the friction between desire and restraint, made her chest feel too tight, her pulse erratic. Every glance, every accidental touch, every heated word seemed to draw them closer, weaving an addictive tension that neither could resist. They argued, yes, but every argument was punctuated by glances that lingered, by touches that betrayed longing, by words that promised more than confrontation. Minutes stretched into hours as they moved through the hotel, repairing, debating, and occasionally pausing just to stand near one another. The magnetic pull was undeniable, a subtle, dangerous dance of fire and attraction. She hated it and loved it in equal measure. "You know," he said suddenly, breaking a silence that had grown almost unbearable, "I'm starting to think we argue just to find a reason to touch." Her eyes widened, a flush rising to her cheeks. "That's absurd," she replied, but even as she said it, she didn't move away. "Is it?" he asked, stepping closer, his voice dropping into something softer, intimate. "Because it feels pretty real to me." She swallowed hard, her pulse thrumming in her ears. The line between conflict and desire blurred, the edges of anger and longing merging into something she had never allowed herself to feel. Every word, every glance, every heated disagreement carried with it the undercurrent of something intimate, something dangerous. Her hands trembled as she picked up another piece of debris, but her gaze stayed locked on him. Maybe you're right," she admitted reluctantly. "Maybe we are. Too close." He smiled, a slow, knowing curve of his lips, the kind that made her heart ache and her stomach flip. "Too close can be thrilling," he said softly. "And maybe that's exactly where we're supposed to be." The tension crackled, thick and electric, as if the hotel itself was holding its breath. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lobby, painting their figures in gold and amber light. Every movement, every word, every fleeting touch built a crescendo of anticipation, a dangerous pull neither could fully resist. She wanted to resist, to draw back, to preserve control, but the fire between them was unstoppable. Their arguments, their friction, had become a magnet, pulling them into a space that was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. Finally, she stepped back slightly, trying to regain composure, though her chest still burned with desire. "We should keep moving," she said, voice tight, betraying her inner conflict. "Of course," he said, a faint smile playing at his lips. "But the friction between us, I have a feeling it's just getting started." She looked at him, pulse racing, heart pounding, and knew he was right. Their dance of conflict and attraction had only begun, and the fire it ignited promised to consume everything if they let it. The late afternoon sun poured through the hotel windows, soft golden light scattering across the dusty floor. The air was thick with the scent of old wood, rain-washed walls, and the lingering perfume of his presence. She moved through the lobby, rearranging chairs and straightening crooked frames, her hands steady but her mind elsewhere. Every glance in his direction made her heart stutter, a subtle pulse she couldn't ignore. He appeared behind her, stepping lightly over a loose floorboard. "You know," he said, voice low, almost teasing, "if you keep working like that, you'll wear yourself out before we finish." She turned, a faint smile brushing her lips despite herself. "Maybe I like working," she replied, a spark of defiance in her tone. "Maybe I like keeping busy, so I don't think about other things." His gaze softened, and he took a step closer, closing the distance between them. Other things? He asked gently, his hand hovering near hers. Do you mean me? She looked down at her hands, suddenly aware of the space separating them. I don't know, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. I'm not sure I should feel anything at all. The air between them thickened, electric, charged with an unspoken tension that neither dared name aloud. Slowly, almost instinctively, their hands brushed. It was brief, a casual, accidental touch, but it sent a jolt straight through her, warm and undeniable. She froze, pulse racing, while he held her gaze, the faintest smile playing at his lips. You're shivering, he murmured, stepping even closer. Cold? Or something else? She swallowed, unsure how to answer, her body betraying her mind. Maybe. Both, she admitted, a tremor in her voice. He leaned in, just slightly, closing the gap, and she felt the heat of his breath, the pull of his presence, and a desire she hadn't dared acknowledge. Then let me help, he whispered, voice low, intimate. Before she could protest, the moment snapped an impulsive, desperate impulse, and his lips were on hers. The kiss was brief, stolen, electric, yet it carried the weight of everything unspoken between them. She froze at first, eyes wide, heart hammering, but slowly, instinctively, she leaned into it, letting the fire consume the hesitation. When they finally pulled back, both breathing heavily, she stared at him, cheeks flushed, eyes shimmering. I shouldn't, she whispered, though her lips still tingled from the contact. Maybe not, he admitted, voice husky. But I don't regret it. The stolen kiss hung between them, a fragile thread binding their growing desire, a promise and a warning in equal measure. She wanted to run, to retreat behind her walls of caution, but her feet felt rooted to the floor, held fast by the gravity of his gaze and the lingering warmth of his touch. They continued their work in a tense, charged silence, each movement careful, deliberate. Every brush of his hand, every accidental touch, sent sparks through her, making her pulse race and her thoughts scatter. The hotel, once a battlefield of frustration and anger, had become a clandestine sanctuary, a place where their desire could ignite without the eyes of the outside world. At one point, she bent to pick up a broken lamp, and he stepped close behind her, his hand brushing hers once more. Careful, he murmured, the edge of a smile tugging at his lips. Don't want to hurt yourself or me. Her breath caught between laughter, frustration, and longing. You're infuriating, she said, voice trembling, and dangerously charming. And you, he replied, stepping closer until she could feel the warmth radiating from him, are infuriating in the best possible way. A sudden clap of thunder rattled the windows, startling her, and she laughed nervously, the sound spilling into the quiet lobby. He laughed, too, a rich, warm sound that wrapped around her like a blanket. In that moment, the world outside, the betrayal, the chaos, the broken hotel faded. There was only them, their stolen moments, the stolen kiss, and the electric tension that hummed between their bodies. She felt herself leaning slightly into him, a dangerous thrill that made her pulse race. Do you think this is wrong? She asked softly, the words barely audible over the distant rumble of rain. He cupped her face gently, thumbs brushing her cheeks, eyes locked with hers. I don't know, he admitted, but it feels right. The heat between them flared again, more urgent, more demanding. She wanted to surrender, to let the desire take over, but caution held her back. The shadow of her brother, the weight of family, the fear of consequences, everything whispered that this was dangerous, fragile, and fleeting. And yet, every instinct urged her forward, pulled her toward him. The kiss had opened something inside her, a vulnerability she hadn't allowed in years, a craving for connection, for intimacy, for something beyond the chaos of her life. They moved through the hotel together, hands occasionally brushing, lingering glances punctuating every step. Every laugh, every smile, every shared task built a tension that was sweet, addictive, and terrifying all at once. She realized, with a thrill and a pang, that she had been waiting for this. The stolen moments, the spark, the intensity of someone who made her feel alive again. As evening fell, the last rays of sunlight filtering through the lobby windows, they paused in the center of the room. Their eyes met, breaths mingling, the air thick with unspoken desire. She wanted to reach out, to pull him close again, to lose herself in the intimacy of the stolen kiss. But the shadow of betrayal loomed, reminding her that happiness could be fragile. That joy always carried risk. He tilted his head slightly, reading her hesitation, and whispered, "We don't have to rush." "But I don't want to let go of this." Her chest tightened. She nodded, heart pounding, words failing her. "Neither do I," she admitted, voice trembling. For a moment they simply stood there, letting the quiet intensity of the hotel wrap around them, savoring the closeness, the stolen moments, the intimacy that neither dared fully name. And in that pause, she felt the undeniable truth. Something had begun, delicate and dangerous, a fire they could not contain. The morning light fell in muted slivers through the half-drawn curtains, casting long shadows across the hotel lobby. The previous night's intimacy lingered like a delicate perfume, an invisible tension she could neither ignore nor escape. She tried to focus on the work ahead, but the echoes of stolen kisses, lingering touches, and shared glances haunted her every thought. A sudden knock at the office door pulled her from her reverie. She opened it to find her brother leaning against the frame, his expression a complicated mix of guilt and defiance. "We need to talk," he said, voice low, almost hesitant. She felt a familiar surge of frustration. "About what?" she asked, tightening her grip on the papers in her hands. "About how you nearly ruined everything, or how you're still acting like nothing happened?" "Both," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck nervously. I didn't mean for it to get so out of hand. I thought I was helping, but I screwed up." Her chest tightened, torn between anger and the deep-seated loyalty she felt toward him. "Helping? You call trashing the lobby helping? You've set me back months, and you have no idea what it cost me." Before he could respond, the stranger stepped into the doorway, hands in his pockets, observing the scene with quiet intensity. His presence was a stabilizing force, a silent anchor amid the chaos. "Maybe we all need to calm down," he said softly, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade of reason. She looked at him, relief and confusion mingling. "Why are you always here at the exact wrong or right moment?" she muttered, barely suppressing a smile. He raised a brow, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "Because someone has to keep the peace," he said, tone teasing but firm. "Then someone has to make sure you don't lose yourself in all this family drama." Her brother sighed, exhaling heavily. "I know I've caused a mess, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But I'm trying. I really am." She studied him, weighing her feelings, the weight of family ties pressing down on her. And yet, the stranger's steady gaze reminded her that there was another perspective, another presence offering support and understanding. Her emotions swirled, conflicted and raw, caught between loyalty and the magnetic pull she couldn't deny. "I don't know if I can trust you," she admitted, voice trembling. "Not right now. Not until you prove that you actually care about this place, about me." Her brother's shoulders slumped, and she could see the sincerity etched into his features. "Then let me show you. I'll fix it. I'll do whatever it takes." The stranger stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "Sometimes actions speak louder than words," he said, voice gentle. "And you deserve to see them, not just hear them." Her heart leapt at the warmth of his touch, the quiet reassurance it carried. She wanted to lean into it, to let herself be comforted, but the tension of family obligations pressed her back into caution. I can't let my emotions cloud my judgment, she murmured. And you won't, he assured her. But you can let someone be there for you, even if it's messy, even if it's complicated. The hotel around them seemed to hold its breath, the quiet hum of the heating system mingling with the distant sounds of the city beyond the windows. She felt torn, the weight of her responsibilities pressing against the pull of desire, against the magnetic presence of the stranger beside her. Every word, every glance, every subtle touch heightened the stakes, making the emotional tension nearly unbearable. Her brother spoke again, breaking the silence. I've been selfish. I know that. I thought I could come back and everything would be fine, but I see now. It's not that simple. And maybe I've been holding you back too. The words stung, yet carried a strange sense of honesty. She wanted to lash out, to remind him of the damage he'd caused, but another part of her tired, vulnerable, longing for connection softened. She looked toward the stranger, who gave a barely perceptible nod of encouragement, a reminder that she wasn't alone in bearing the emotional weight. You're right, she said finally, taking a deep breath. It's not simple. And I don't know if I can forgive you just yet. I understand, her brother replied quietly. I just want to try. The stranger moved closer, his presence a protective shield, his eyes locking with hers in silent reassurance. And we'll figure it out together, he said softly, a promise layered with quiet intensity. She felt her pulse quicken, caught in the delicate balance between loyalty, anger, and longing. Every glance, every subtle gesture seemed to pull her deeper into a complicated web of emotions. And she knew that one wrong move could shatter the fragile trust she was beginning to rebuild. Hours passed as they worked together, her brother attempting to make amends, the stranger offering guidance, support, and a quiet, steadying presence. The cracks in the foundation were visible, not just in the hotel's walls, but in their relationships, their trust, and the growing connection between her and the stranger. Each word, each action carried weight, and she felt the fragility of it all pressing down, a constant reminder that happiness was never guaranteed. As evening fell, the golden light gave way to the soft glow of lamplight, casting long shadows across the lobby. She paused, looking at the two men who had come to shape her world in such different ways. One represented family, guilt, and the complicated bonds of blood. The other, desire, understanding, and the promise of something entirely new. Her chest ached with the intensity of the choice she didn't yet have to make, the pull between loyalty and longing threatening to overwhelm her. The stranger's hand brushed against hers, again accidental or intentional. She couldn't tell, and a shiver ran through her, a reminder that the fire between them hadn't dimmed. Her brother glanced at her, expression vulnerable, words unsaid hanging in the air. I don't want to lose you, he murmured, voice heavy with emotion. She swallowed, torn between the past and the present, between the bonds of family and the magnetic pull of the stranger beside her. The hotel hummed with quiet anticipation, holding its breath along with her, and she realized that the next step, whether toward forgiveness, love, or heartbreak, would change everything. The hotel was quiet, bathed in the silver glow of moonlight, filtering through half-drawn curtains. Dust danced in the beams of light, tiny motes floating like secrets in the night. She moved cautiously through the lobby, hammer in hand, the soft creak of floorboards echoing like whispers. Somewhere in the shadows, he worked beside her, a steady presence that made her chest tighten. I didn't think anyone could make fixing this place feel intimate, she said, trying to inject humor into her voice, though her heart pounded like a drum. He chuckled softly, the sound low and comforting. Intimate? He asked, eyes glinting in the moonlight. I thought we were just avoiding another disaster. She paused, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, feeling the heat of his gaze settle on her. Maybe it's more than that, she admitted, voice catching. I don't know why, but when you're here, it doesn't feel like work at all. He stepped closer, careful to respect the invisible line she had drawn. It's because we make a good team, he said gently. And maybe we're learning to trust. Not just the hotel, but each other. The words hung between them, charged with something unspoken, a tension that made her pulse race. She swallowed hard, trying to focus on the task at hand, the loose floorboards, the broken shelves, the scattered debris, but every movement, every glance in his direction, reminded her of the stolen kiss, of lingering touches, and the way her heart betrayed her calm exterior. Hours passed in quiet rhythm. Their hands brushed as they passed tools, their shoulders occasionally touching as they bent to fix broken hinges or straighten tilted picture frames. Each contact was a spark, a jolt of electricity that left her both flushed and breathless. You know, he said softly, leaning against a workbench, I could get used to nights like this. She looked at him, heart skipping. Nights like this? She repeated, trying to sound nonchalant. Working together, laughing, stealing moments between hammer swings, he said, eyes dark with intensity. It feels like we're the only two people in the world. Her chest tightened, the words striking a chord she hadn't expected to awaken. It's tempting, she whispered, the confession barely audible. He stepped closer, bridging the last inches between them. Tempting? He echoed, voice low, almost a growl. I was hoping you'd say irresistible. She bit her lip, resisting the urge to close the gap, to let her desire guide her. We shouldn't, she said, though her body leaned slightly toward him, betraying her resolve. Not now. Not with everything else. The past, my brother. This hotel, it's too complicated. And yet, he murmured, brushing a finger lightly across hers. Here we are, standing too close, thinking too much, feeling too much. The intimacy of the moment was overwhelming. The hotel, in its quiet state of repair, became a cocoon, isolating them from the world and allowing vulnerability to surface. She found herself confessing small pieces of herself, fears, doubts, regrets that she had never shared aloud. And he listened, not with judgment, but with a patience that made her heart ache. I've always felt responsible for keeping everything together, she admitted, her voice trembling. For my family, for this hotel, for everything. And sometimes I feel like I'm failing at it all. He reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. You're not failing, he said softly, eyes locked on hers. You're human. And humans need someone to lean on sometimes. Her breath caught, her chest tightening. The honesty in his words, combined with the warmth of his touch, made her tremble. She wanted to close the distance, to let herself be held, to give in to the temptation she had resisted for so long, but caution, old habits, and fear held her back. Instead, she nodded, a fragile acceptance. I appreciate that, she whispered, the weight of vulnerability pressing against her. They continued their work in silence, the quiet intimacy growing with every shared glance, every accidental touch, every subtle brush of hands. Laughter broke through the tension occasionally, light and airy, carrying them through the long hours as they repaired the damage, both physical and emotional. At one point, she bent to sweep debris into a dustpan, and he knelt beside her, their shoulders brushing. She felt the electricity of the moment, the closeness that neither could deny, and her pulse quickened. Why do you make it so hard to stay focused? She asked, a mixture of frustration and longing in her voice. Because I like seeing you laugh, he said, a playful smile tugging at his lips. And because every time I look at you, I want more. Her heart skipped, caught in the pull of desire and fear. More? She echoed, almost breathless. Yes, he admitted, voice low, intimate. More than just moments like this. More than just work. More than just stolen glances. I want... He trailed off, letting the words hang between them, heavy with unspoken promise. Her breath caught, and she felt the fragile walls around her heart trembling. She wanted to step back, to protect herself from the intensity, from the possibility of heartbreak. And yet, every instinct urged her forward, toward him, toward the danger of surrendering. Outside, the night deepened, the moon casting silvery shadows across the lobby floor. The hotel seemed to hold its breath, enveloping them in its quiet embrace, as if the walls themselves were witnesses to the slow, unfolding intimacy. Finally, she straightened, brushing her hands on her apron, trying to regain composure. "We should get some rest," she said, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her inner conflict. He nodded, but his gaze lingered, dark and magnetic. "Rest, or at least pause," he said softly. "Because this, what we're feeling, it isn't going away." She swallowed hard, heart pounding, knowing he was right. The hotel had become a stage for their stolen moments, their quiet confessions, their growing desire. And while the night had deepened their connection, it also reminded her that old wounds, past betrayals, and unspoken fears could still rise to the surface, threatening the fragile bond they were building. The night pressed against the windows of the hotel, dark and heavy, rain streaking glass panes with the soft patter of a relentless storm. Inside, the lobby smelled of wet stone and wood polish, mingling with the faint warmth of candles someone had lit earlier. The quiet tension between them felt suffocating, as if every heartbeat echoed louder than the last. She paced the room, hands twisting at the hem of her blouse, eyes darting to the shadows where he stood. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she demanded, voice trembling, brittle with anger and hurt. "Why did I have to find out like this?" He ran a hand over his face, exhaling sharply, the weight of guilt heavy in his posture. "I wanted to," he said, voice rough, "but I didn't know how. And I was afraid." "Afraid?" Her laugh was hollow, breaking somewhere between frustration and disbelief. "Afraid of what? That I'd hate you? That I'd leave? You already might." He snapped, stepping closer, the storm outside seeming to echo their rising tension. "Do you have any idea how much I've struggled, keeping my distance, trying not to ruin everything we've started?" Her chest tightened at his words, every syllable laced with desperation she could feel as a physical ache. "And yet, here we are," she whispered, voice barely audible. "And you think silence will make things better? You think avoiding the truth protects either of us?" He hesitated, and in that pause, the unspoken history between them pressed into the room like the humid summer air before a storm. His eyes searched hers, raw vulnerability glimmering in the depths of brown. I didn't want to lose you," he admitted, voice low, trembling with the weight of emotion. For a moment, the storm outside became the storm inside her chest. Hurt, desire, frustration, they collided and roared like the wind battering the hotel walls. She wanted to push him away, to flee from the intensity, yet every instinct screamed to stay, to bridge the chasm that had opened between them. "You're reckless," she said finally, her voice sharp but betraying the tremor of longing underneath. "All this secrecy, all this hesitation, it's destroying me." "And you," he countered, stepping closer, "you're stubborn and beautiful and infuriating, and I can't stand the thought of not being near you, not being a part of this, part of you." The air thickened, charged with emotions too potent to be contained by words. And then something broke, not a wall, not a barrier, but the dam of restraint they had built around their hearts. He reached for her hand, hesitated, then entwined his fingers with hers, heat radiating between them. "I don't know how to fix this," he said, voice cracking, But I know I can't do it without you. She looked at their joined hands, pulse fluttering, the warmth seeping into her skin like a lifeline. Her own hands shook, caught between the longing to retreat and the desire to surrender. I don't know if I can forgive you, she whispered, eyes glistening with unshed tears. And I don't expect you to, he replied, stepping closer until the space between them was almost non-existent. All I can do is be here. Let me be here, and we'll figure it out. Together. Her breath hitched, heart hammering against her ribcage. The tension that had simmered for weeks, the stolen glances, the fleeting touches, the quiet nights of shared laughter and vulnerability, all of it surged forward in an unstoppable wave. She wanted to retreat, but the storm in her chest and the storm outside were one, both demanding surrender. Without thinking, without reasoning, she closed the last inches, pressing herself to him. Their foreheads touched, breaths mingling, hearts racing in tandem. The kiss that followed wasn't hesitant. It was fierce, consuming, a release of weeks of tension, frustration, longing, and unspoken emotion. Time seemed to blur. The rain outside became a soft percussion to the rhythm of their closeness. Her hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, while he wrapped her in an embrace that felt both protective and desperate. Every kiss, every whisper, every sigh was a confession words could never hold. When they finally pulled back, gasping for air, the intensity lingered, the storm of emotion still thrumming in the room. She rested her forehead against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, feeling the tremor of his hands against her back. We can't. Let this destroy us, she whispered, voice shaky but determined. Destroy us? He echoed, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. No. If anything, it will make us stronger. But we have to be honest from now on. No secrets. No hesitation. Just you. The vulnerability in his voice, the raw honesty, stirred something deep within her. She nodded, tears sliding freely now, but not just from pain relief, longing, and a fragile hope mingled in equal measure. No more secrets, she agreed. I can do that. We can. Try together. For a moment, the world outside the hotel ceased to exist. There were no walls, no broken family ties, no looming betrayals, just the two of them, pressed together, hearts exposed and beating in tandem. Yet even in that fragile peace, she knew the night had tested them, and tomorrow would bring new challenges, old wounds, and the temptation to doubt the fragile trust they had just rebuilt. He pulled back slightly, brushing wet strands of hair from her face, eyes dark with unspoken promises. We survived tonight, he murmured, voice low and intimate, and we'll survive whatever comes next if we face it together. She leaned against him once more, inhaling the scent of rain, wood, and him. Together, she whispered, voice trembling but resolute, the word a vow and a plea all at once. The sky was a bruise of dark clouds, swollen with unshed rain, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and ozone. She hurried across the cobblestone path outside the hotel, clutching her coat around her, but it was useless. The first sheets of rain fell with sudden force, drumming against the roof of the lobby, cascading down her hair, soaking her to the skin in seconds. Wait! His voice called from behind her, raw and urgent, cutting through the storm like a beacon. She turned to see him running, arms extended, as if the rain itself were no obstacle to his pursuit. She couldn't help but smile, breathless despite the chill. You're insane, she shouted over the roar of the storm, though her heart leapt at the sight of him. And you're impossible, he shot back, voice edged with a laugh that carried both relief and longing. He closed the distance in 2 strides, grabbing her hands, holding her as the rain plastered hair to her face and soaked her clothes. You can't run from me or from us out here, he said, eyes blazing. water dripping from his lashes. She swallowed hard, the storm mirroring the chaos in her chest. I can't lose myself in this," she whispered, voice almost drowned by the thunder rolling overhead. "Not now. Not when there's so much else to deal with. Lose yourself?" He echoed, cupping her face with hands that were both gentle and firm, grounding her in the torrent. "You've never lost yourself. Not once. You've just ignored what's been here all along." His words struck her like lightning, illuminating every suppressed feeling, every stolen glance, every tension-filled moment they'd shared. Her pulse quickened, and for a heartbeat she couldn't breathe, not from the rain, but from the intensity in his eyes. "Stop," she murmured, but her hands didn't move. "Stop looking at me like that. Stop making me." "Making you what?" he asked softly, pressing his forehead to hers. "Feel alive? Feel wanted? Feel seen?" She couldn't answer, because the truth she had been denying for weeks suddenly surged forward in a flood she couldn't contain. And he didn't let her answer, not with words, not with hesitation. He kissed her then, passionately, as if the storm outside demanded nothing less. Rain mingled with tears on their faces, dripping down her cheeks, down her neck, soaking them both. The kiss was a release, a confession, a surrender of hearts that had been fighting for control. She gasped against his lips, hands tangling in his hair, the wet fabric of their clothes, pressing them together like a second skin. "I've wanted this," she admitted between kisses, voice trembling with a mixture of relief and desperation. "I've wanted you for so long, and I've been waiting," he murmured, voice low and intimate, "for the moment you'd stop holding back, for the moment you'd let me in." Every word, every touch, every heartbeat was amplified by the storm raging around them. Lightning flashed, illuminating the soaked streets and casting fleeting shadows across their entwined bodies. It was cinematic, almost surreal, and yet intensely real, the kind of love that left one breathless, trembling, and utterly consumed. They broke apart just enough to look at each other, rain dripping from lashes and hair, clothes clinging, hearts racing in synchrony. Her chest rose and fell, breaths shallow, her lips still tingling from the kiss. "Why did we wait so long?" she whispered, voice barely audible over the storm. "Because we had to," he replied, voice firm yet tender. "Because we had to be sure it wasn't just desire. Because we had to survive the walls we built around ourselves first." She leaned into him again, feeling the strength and warmth of his body. "I don't care about walls anymore," she said softly, almost a vow. I want you, and I want you," he said, pressing another kiss to the curve of her jaw, the nape of her neck, letting their closeness speak the truth neither had dared to articulate before. "All of you, here, now, every impossible, chaotic, beautiful part of you." The rain became a backdrop to their confessions, the pattering on the cobblestones and the roaring sky harmonizing with the rapid beats of their hearts. Each movement, each stolen touch, each whispered word was laden with the weight of weeks of tension, heartbreak, and longing. And yet, amidst the storm, nothing else existed, just them, surrendering fully to the moment. But even as the intensity soared, the outside world remained a silent threat, whispering of responsibilities left unattended, family grievances unresolved, and the fragility of the hotel they had fought so hard to save. The exhilaration of passion was tempered by the awareness that the storm could not last forever, that reality would inevitably intrude. "I don't want this to end," she said suddenly, voice small, desperate, clinging to him as if he could shield her from everything beyond the rain. "It doesn't have to," he replied, pressing his forehead to hers again, eyes glistening with a shared vulnerability. "We can face everything together, if we choose to." The rain began to taper, softening to a gentle drizzle, the sound shifting to a delicate percussion that mirrored the quiet aftershocks of their emotional storm. Their clothes were drenched, their hair plastered, but neither cared. They had spoken truths in the only way they knew how, with actions, with passion, with unflinching honesty. For a moment, they simply held each other, the world outside receding into a blur of wet streets and shimmering lights. Vulnerability had turned into connection, confession into trust, and desire into something deep and cinematic, a love that neither could ignore. And yet, the hotel, their family, their past mistakes, all of it loomed in the edges of her mind. A reminder that while they had found each other under the rain, the storm was not yet over. The first light of dawn streamed through the hotel's wide windows, casting a golden hue over polished floors and freshly arranged furniture. The air smelled of wood polish, coffee, and faint traces of rain from the night before. She stood at the top of the grand staircase, looking down at the lobby she had rebuilt, room by room, heart by heart. For a moment, everything felt still perfect, fragile in the way only mornings after storms can be. He emerged from the side, his hands tucked into his pockets, eyes soft as he watched her. "You're quiet," he remarked gently, voice low, as if afraid to disturb the fragile peace. "I'm reflecting," she replied, fingers tracing the railing. "All of this? The chaos, the mistakes, the moments we thought we'd lost, it's here. And somehow, it's beautiful now." He stepped closer, closing the distance, the sunlight catching in his hair, haloing him in warmth. "It's beautiful because of you," he said simply, the words carrying weight and sincerity. "Not just the hotel. All of this is yours. You saved it. And in the process, you saved me too." Her chest tightened at his words, the vulnerability they carried like a tangible presence. I didn't do it alone," she whispered, eyes meeting his. "You've been with me every step. You've helped me see things I was too afraid to admit. About the hotel, about my family, about myself." He smiled, a quiet, intimate smile, and reached for her hand. "And I hope you'll let me stay through every step still to come. Not just as a helper, but as part of this part of you." Her fingers tightened around his, and for a long moment they simply stood there, hands entwined, sharing the warmth of connection born from trials, tears, and quiet courage. Downstairs, the sounds of movement reminded them that life outside their bubble continued, the murmur of cleaning staff, the clink of dishes from the reopened cafe, the soft laughter of returning guests who sensed, without words, that something had changed in the atmosphere of the place. It wasn't just a hotel anymore. It was alive, breathing, resonating with the care and love poured into it. She guided him down the staircase, each step deliberate, savoring the weight of his presence beside her. I think we've learned something," she said softly, glancing at the lobby, at the polished floors, at the subtle sparkle of sunlight catching dust motes in the air. "About patience, about forgiveness, about courage, about choosing what matters, even when it's terrifying." He nodded, eyes dark and reflective. "And love," he added, voice thick. "Love is part of that choice too. Choosing someone, even when the past threatens to pull you apart. Choosing to stay, to build something together, brick by brick, heart by heart." She let out a small, wistful laugh. "I never thought a hotel could teach me so much about myself. About us. About second chances." He brushed a wet strand of hair from her face, thumb lingering on her cheek. "Second chances aren't just given," he said softly. "They're made, earned, fought for. And I think we've earned this one." Her breath caught at the intimacy, the quiet certainty in his tone, the way his eyes held hers, unwavering and patient. She leaned into him, letting herself absorb the moment fully, allowing all doubts and fears to fall away. For the first time in months, She felt wholly present, wholly safe, and wholly in love. They moved through the lobby together, making small gestures, adjusting a chair, straightening a rug, sharing laughter over a lingering coffee stain that stubbornly refused to disappear. Even the minutiae of hotel life felt charged, infused with the depth of their shared experience. Each touch, each glance, each whispered conversation carried the weight of everything they had endured. Later, on the rooftop, overlooking the city waking beneath the morning mist, she rested her head on his shoulder. "We did it," she murmured, the words soft, fragile, yet filled with triumph. All of it. The hotel, the chaos, the mistakes, even us. He wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. "And we'll keep doing it," he said, voice resolute yet tender. "Together, no matter what comes next." She lifted her head slightly, eyes searching his. "No matter what comes next?" She echoed, a whisper, a vow, a hope. For a few moments, the city below and the world beyond the hotel walls ceased to matter. The wind carried the scent of fresh rain and possibility, sweeping over them, wrapping them in a fragile, perfect bubble of peace. And in that bubble, every worry, every fear, every lingering resentment melted, replaced with the glow of a love that had survived storms, confrontations, and misgivings. Yet, even amidst this triumph, a shadow of uncertainty lingered. The hotel had been saved, their love rekindled, and yet life messy, unpredictable, relentless waited beyond the doors. Family obligations, lingering resentments, past mistakes, they all lingered in the corners of her mind, whispering that perfection was fleeting, and that tomorrow would demand choices, compromises, and courage all over again. She turned to him, gripping his hand tightly. "Promise me," she said softly, voice trembling just slightly. "Promise me that we won't let anything tear this apart. Not misunderstandings, not pride, not the past." He held her gaze, eyes steady, deep, and unwavering. "I promise," he said firmly. "I'll fight for this, for us, for every moment we've earned. And I hope you'll fight with me." She nodded, letting herself believe the promise, letting herself be swept away in the quiet certainty that had eluded her for so long. They stood together, hands entwined, hearts beating in tandem, watching the sunrise paint the city gold, a symbol not only of a new day, but of the second chances they had claimed, earned, and embraced.